So today we are going to have a look at the second battle between Rudeus Greyrat and dragon god Orsted. So few months after Paul's tragic death, Rudeus got married to Roxy, and one day Rudeus falls asleep and then sees Hitogami in his dream once again. Hitogami reveals to Rudeus what would have happened if Rudeus had followed his previous advice. He says Paul would still be alive, but Roxy and Rudeus would not be married. Rudeus would have been married instead to Rinia and Persena. After this, Hitogami ends their encounter by requesting that Rudeus go check on his home's basement. Due to all the tragic events that happened in his life, Rudeus is more trusting of Hitogami at this point, and agrees to do what Hitogami said. So Rudeus then wakes up, and as Rudeus is about to leave his room and check the basement, he sees an old man sitting on a chair, who introduces himself as Rudeus from the future. So the old Rudeus from the future stated that he arrived here by past teleportation magic. He warned Rudeus that if he were to go to the basement, as per Hitogami's instructions, it would trigger a chain of events that would cause a mouse to infect Roxy with magic stone disease, which causes one to slowly turn into a rock and then die. He reveals that killing Roxy is apparently part of Hitogami's plan. Then old Rudeus also explains that Hitogami will also somehow manipulate events so that Princess Ariel would return to Asura to start her revolt, and Sylphie to follow Ariel, which would lead to her death in battle. Old Rudeus also advises present Rudeus to forgive Eris and reform his connection with her, and send a letter to her in the Holy Land of Swords. Old Rudeus also advises present Rudeus to be skeptical of Hitogami, but to avoid direct confrontation with him. His third piece of advice was for Rudeus to consult with Nanohoshi. After giving the above advice, old Rudeus gives present Rudeus his diary from the future, and then dies due to the injuries that he got while traveling back in time. So after old Rudeus dies, present Rudeus then cremates him, and buries his remains next to his father's. He then goes to the basement and confirms that the mouse that would infect Roxy with the magic stone disease is present there. So Rudeus kills the mouse, and plans to send the mouse's corpse to the Magic Guild to be studied. After this, Rudeus remains unable to go to sleep, and so he begins to write a letter to Eris. Later, Rudeus reads the diary from his future self, which described the events that will happen if he listens to Hitogami's advice. He reads that Roxy became infected with magic stone disease, which was identified by Cliff and his Eye of Identification. Her disease can only be healed with God-rank detoxification magic. So Cliff, Zenoba, and Rudeus go to the Holy Kingdom of Melis, using teleport magic circles to get the book with God-class detoxification spells. Unfortunately, this book is within a cathedral that cannot be entered unless you are Archbishop level. So they decide to steal the book, but they are caught. Cliff dies during the battle, and the magic teleporting circle that they used to get there gets destroyed. They also become wanted men in the Melis region. By the time Rudeus and Zenoba arrive home, Roxy was already half crystallized and had died. Elinalise is informed of Cliff's death, and she leaves town while being heavily pregnant. Rudeus then becomes depressed due to Roxy's death, and begins neglecting Sylphie. Sylphie then leaves with Ariel, who has returned to the kingdom of Asura. Rudeus later decides to chase after Sylphie by following her to Asura. During his travels, he frequently runs into Eris, and she is unable to properly express her feeling towards Rudeus, and so she just beats him. Rudeus discovers that Ariel has returned to Asura in order to gather an army to perform a coup. However, this fails, and so Ariel, Sylphie, and Luke all die. Rudeus continues to read the diary from his future self, which described the following events. After Sylphie's death, Rudeus spent more time going to brothels. He also frequently ran into Eris, who also was living in Sharia. Rudeus continues to have mixed feelings about Eris. The Melis Church put a bounty on the heads of Rudeus and Zenoba due to their exploits in stealing the God-class detoxification magic book. Then months later, Zenoba completes his automaton research, and he is able to create essentially a robot that looks like Sylphie and acts like her as well. But Rudeus ends up destroying this robot, and he develops a deep hatred for Hitogami. He vows to get stronger in order to kill Hitogami, and throughout this process, he loses touch with his family. Only Aisha stays in touch with him. So to augment his physical strength, he and Zenoba develop full body armor similar to his prosthetic hand, which Rudeus can augment with magic to improve his physical strength. So future Rudeus continues to work on his magic over the years, developing gravity magic, electricity magic, and voice magic. However, he becomes a bad person, and he would frequently get into arguments, do whatever he wanted, and occasionally rape women. Rudeus continued to run into Eris, and so he begins to falsely suspect that she is affiliated with Hitogami. Rudeus continues to try to gather more information about Hitogami by questioning beings who are long-lived. He ends up trying to speak to Atofe but ended up fighting her and her Imperial guards. During the battle, he becomes careless and in the end is saved by Eris. but then Eris is killed as a result. So after Eris's death, Ghislaine explains to Rudeus that Eris has loved him all this time and had followed him around for this reason. Ghislaine also blames Rudeus for Eris's death. Then years pass, and Zenoba dies. He is killed by the order of the temple. Julie, Ginger, and Aisha are killed as well. So with this, Rudeus no longer has any living loved ones. There was no mention in the diary of the fate of Lucy, Norn, or Lilia. So through his travels, Rudeus discovers the nature of this world, which is that it is shaped like a cube, with 6 sides and consists of the dragon world, human world, demon world, beast world, ocean world, and sky world. He learns that inside their world is the void world, where Hitogami resides. So Rudeus learns that in order to travel to the void world, one must collect the 5 ancient dragon race treasures. However, collecting all 5 treasures turns out to be impossible within his lifespan. So instead of that, Rudeus learns how to travel to the past, and he decides to go to the past to correct his mistakes. And this is the point where the diary of the future Rudeus ends. So after finishing reading his future self's diary, Rudeus has a discussion with Sylphie and Roxy. He vaguely reveals that someone has shown him the future in which a bad person would cause terrible things to happen to his family. Rudeus then broaches the subject of adding Eris to their polygamous relationship. Sylphie and Roxy initially object, since they know that Eris broke Rudeus's heart, which resulted in his erectile dysfunction. But Rudeus reassures them that he now knows that this was actually a misunderstanding, and both Sylphie and Roxy tentatively agree to accept Eris, depending on how well Rudeus's and Eris's are able to reconcile in their meeting together. Later, Rudeus falls asleep, and he sees Hitogami in his dream. Hitogami is initially extremely frustrated at the fact that future Rudeus has disrupted Hitogami's plans to kill Rudeus's family. Hitogami reports that Orsted is trying to kill Hitogami, but he cannot do it alone. However, Rudeus and his descendants are not affected by Orsted's curse, which causes all beings to hate Orsted. This means that Rudeus's descendants may end up assisting Orsted in killing Hitogami, which would destroy the world. Furthermore, Rudeus and his descendants have a strong fate, which means that Hitogami has difficulty manipulating their fate. So, because Rudeus and his descendants have strong fates, and they may end up helping Orsted to kill Hitogami, Hitogami tries to kill Rudeus's descendants to prevent his own ultimate death. Rudeus tells Hitogami that he will do anything for him if he is able to save his family. Therefore, Hitogami suggests that if Rudeus wants to save his family, he needs to kill Orsted. So Rudeus then wakes up, and he vows to kill Orsted to save his family from Hitogami. Rudeus then consults with Nanahoshi, in accordance with his future self's instructions. He tells her everything about his future self's encounter and his dream with Hitogami. After spending the day reviewing the diary and thinking, Nanahoshi discusses her hypotheses with Rudeus, which stated that Rudeus and Nanahoshi were transported into this world by someone whose goal is to kill Hitogami. Nanahoshi was transported so that she may create some currently unknown method to kill Hitogami, while Rudeus was transported so that his descendants and Orsted could kill Hitogami with that method. Nanahoshi then suggests to Rudeus that he team up with Orsted instead of fighting or trying to kill him, but Rudeus refuses, since Hitogami is unreachable, while Orsted is within this world. He reasons that for the purpose of protecting his family from Hitogami, it would be easier to kill Orsted than to kill Hitogami himself. Rudeus then begs Nanahoshi to help him kill Orsted. She is reluctant at first because Orsted has saved her in the past, but she ultimately agrees to help him. So on the other side, Eris gets ready to leave the Holy Land of the Sword to meet up with Rudeus in Renoa, with who she hasn't been in contact for many years. But just prior to departing, she receives a letter from Rudeus. The letter describes how Rudeus initially thought Eris had rejected him, but he now knows this was a misunderstanding and that she actually loves him. Rudeus informs Eris in this letter that he currently has 2 wives, but is willing to accept Eris as his 3rd wife. After reading this, her 2 friends argue over whether Rudeus is an asshole or not. Rudeus's letter also included a postscript, which states that he plans to challenge Orsted to battle, with the caveat that he may not survive that battle. Eris becomes excited after reading this, and she and Ghislaine head off toward Rudeus. Meanwhile, Rudeus works on his preparations to kill Orsted. He works on creating full-body magic armor, with the help of Zenoba and Cliff. He decides that he needs to find a suitable partner to fight Orsted. Bodigadi was missing, Rudyard wasn't present, and Perugius refused. He rules out Zenoba, Cliff, and Elena Lise, since they are his friends. He considers begging Eris to help fight if she were to arrive in time. So he puts the subject of finding a partner on hold for now. And instead of that, Rudeus considers various battle tactics to take down Orsted, including using traps and sneak attacks. During these preparations, Hitogami reappears to Rudeus in his dreams. Hitogami is quite pleased with Rudeus's decision to try to kill Orsted, but he warns him that he will wipe out Rudeus's family if he fails. Hitogami offers advice on building the magic armor, and suggests that Rudeus use magic tools in his fight. Hitogami again confirms that he cannot see Orsted's future, but can see his own. And so he sees that in the future, he is killed by Orsted and Rudeus's descendants. Rudeus gets Hitogami to promise that if he kills Orsted, Hitogami will leave Rudeus and his family alone. Soon a month passes, and the magic armor construction is making good progress. It stands 3 meters tall, which is much larger than the armor that future Rudeus created for himself. By making the armor bigger, the engineering was easier, and it was more robust. Rudeus also goes shopping with Roxy to buy magic tools. He comes up with an idea to combine the same tool together, so that he can fire off his stone cannons in rapid succession like a Gatling gun. They enlist the help of a craftsman to help make this tool. Rudeus then consults with Nanahoshi. They come up with the idea of using poison, and they also come up with a plan to lure Orsted. Using Ariel's connections, Rudeus buys the poison that he plans to use against Orsted. Rudeus chooses his planned battleground against Orsted and practices using traps. He also learns close-quarters combat from Elinalise. Another month passes, and the magic armor is complete. It is 3 meters tall, and he wears it like a mecha suit. It has a Gatling cannon installed on one hand that fires stone cannons. The other hand has a magic-absorbing stone, and the armor is also equipped with a shield. Soon, Elinalise reveals that she is pregnant with Cliff's child, and Cliff confirms this for himself with his identification eye. Rudeus then tests out the magic armor by sparring with Sylphie and Zenoba. Sylphie's magic and Zenoba's punches are ineffective against the armor, and Rudeus is quite pleased with the armor. Back at home, Roxy announces to the family that she is pregnant, and the whole family congratulates her. Rudeus notes that this was a stark contrast to the atmosphere when Lilia revealed her pregnancy due to Paul's infidelity many years ago. His little sister Aisha reveals that she has successfully cultivated rice in their garden, and Rudeus is excited at the idea of being able to eat rice regularly. The family then enjoys their dinner in celebration. After dinner, Rudeus informs his family that he will be fighting a strong opponent without specifically naming Orsted, and that his preparations for the past few months have been leading to this. He warns them that there's a chance he may not survive. Later that evening, Rudeus explains the whole situation to Roxy and Sylphie. He explains that he plans to fight Orsted, and that if he fails to kill Orsted, his family will be in danger. Sylphie and Roxy promise to protect their family, and accept the fact that Rudeus will be fighting the dragon god Orsted. Soon, when his preparations are complete, they move according to their plan, and Orsted is lured into a deserted village by Nanahoshi. Their Orsted is pricked by a poisoned handle, and Rudeus triggers a trap inside a building. Rudeus then follows up with a barrage of long-range magic attacks, including a massive explosion like a nuclear bomb. But despite all this, Orsted takes minimal damage. Orsted then closes the distance between himself and Rudeus. Rudeus is able to do some damage to Orsted with his sword because its force increases exponentially proportional to the enemy's defense. But Orsted is then able to cut off both of his armor's arms off, including Rudeus's right arm. Orsted continues to damage Rudeus and his armor. Rudeus then ejects himself from the magic armor and the armor is destroyed. Outside of the armor, Rudeus is quickly defeated and seriously injured. Before killing Rudeus, Orsted questions Rudeus regarding why he came after him. Rudeus explains that Hitogami told Rudeus that his descendants would help Orsted kill Hitogami, which would destroy the world. Rudeus further explains that if he kills Orsted, Hitogami will spare Rudeus's family. Rudeus then crawls to Orsted's legs and begs that he give up on killing Hitogami. Orsted refuses, and so Rudeus bites Orsted's leg with the intention of launching a magical suicide attack. But Orsted uses disturb magic and kicks him away. Before Orsted can kill and finish off Rudeus, Eris suddenly appears. So actually, a few days prior to Orsted and Rudeus's battle, Eris and Ghislaine arrived in Sharia City, and they find Rudeus's home and meet his family. Eris then finds out that Rudeus has headed off on his own to kill Orsted. After Orsted and Rudeus's battle had commenced, Eris and Ghislaine are able to locate them by the sounds of battle, and by seeing a large explosion. Eris finds Rudeus just as he is on the verge of death. Eris faces Orsted while she leaves Ghislaine to tend to Rudeus. Eris notes that Rudeus has been able to inflict a significant amount of damage on Orsted. Despite this, looking at Orsted, Eris recognizes that she is unable to defeat him alone. Orsted comments in surprise that Eris is risking her life for someone other than Luke, who is apparently fated to be her husband. But Eris responds that she doesn't know of anyone with that name. While fighting, Eris thinks back to her last meeting with the Sword God, where he offered her one of 3 swords before she departed. She chose the Phoenix Elegant Dragon Sword, which has the ability to negate one's opponent's battle aura defense, or at least weaken it. The Sword God also gives a piece of advice for her confrontation with Orsted, which was to never move first, because of his strong counterattack due to his proficiency in Water God sword style. As Orsted and Eris face off, Orsted is surprised at the fact that Eris doesn't approach to attack. He comments that the Eris in front of him is different than the Eris he knows. Eris and Orsted then fight with Eris, remembering other bits of advice that the Sword God Gulfarian gave her regarding fighting Orsted. Eris was able to cut off Orsted's hand, but he quickly reattaches it and heals the rest of his injuries from his battle with Rudeus. Eris then transitions from Sword God style to North God style and throws a secondary sword at Orsted, which is easily repelled. At this point, Rudeus stands up with his injuries healed, but he's drained and near death. Roxy and Sylphie also arrive to support him. Eris and Sylphie then plan to fight Orsted, while having Rudeus escape with Roxy and Ghislaine. Seeing this, Orsted then declares that he cannot allow Rudeus to live while he is allied with Hitogami. However, he does note that Rudeus can potentially be useful with his magic armor, his immense magical power, and his immunity to Orsted's curse. Therefore, Orsted offers Rudeus to betray Hitogami and join him. Orsted states that with his power, he should be able to protect Rudeus and his family from Hitogami, but he is not able to give any absolute promises. So after hearing his offer, Rudeus agrees to join Orsted to be his subordinate. So Orsted heals Rudeus as promised, and both his missing upper limbs are regrown. Rudeus is also given a magic bracelet by Orsted, which possibly prevents him from being spied on by Hitogami. Orsted also instructs Rudeus to contact him again once his magic has replenished. Rudeus reflects that he doesn't regret betraying Hitogami, and in fact feels that Orsted is much more trustworthy. After returning home, Rudeus then informed all those who helped him against Orsted that he lost and in fact has now joined him. So that's all for this video, and we will discuss the aftermath of their battle in the next part of this video. So, yeah, that's all, and thanks for watching.